You ever notice how almost every spiritual tradition eventually becomes obsessed with the breath? Ancient yogis guarded breathing techniques like sacred secrets. Monks spent decades mastering them. Mystics claimed certain breathing patterns could alter consciousness so deeply that the boundary between self and reality began to dissolve. And yet today, most people breathe unconsciously, completely unaware that the way they breathe may actually determine the quality of their awareness. Because breath is more than just oxygen. And in many traditions, the breath is considered the bridge between the physical body and consciousness itself. So in this video, we're going deeper than basic breathing exercises. These are advanced spiritual breathing techniques, practices designed not just to relax you, but to fundamentally shift perception, awareness, and inner stillness. And some of them can become surprisingly intense if practiced consistently. Before trying any advanced breathing technique, there's something important you need to understand. Your breath reflects your state of consciousness. When the mind is chaotic, the breath becomes irregular. When fear takes over, breathing becomes shallow. When awareness deepens, breathing naturally slows down. This is why advanced breathwork has always been considered powerful. Because instead of trying to force the mind to become still directly, you influence the breath first, and the mind follows. Most people spend years trying to stop thinking during meditation. But the mind doesn't quiet itself through pressure. It becomes quiet when attention becomes unified. And breath is one of the fastest ways to unify attention. One of the most profound techniques for spiritual awakening is something called conscious rhythmic breathing. Not fast breathing, not dramatic breathing, precise breathing. Here's how it works. Inhale slowly for 5 seconds. Exhale slowly for 5 seconds. No pause in between. Just continuous, circular breathing. And the important part is maintaining complete awareness of the breath as it moves through the body. At first, this sounds simple, almost too simple. But after several minutes, something strange begins happening. Mental noise starts fading. The sense of time softens. And awareness begins separating from compulsive thought. Because rhythmic breathing stabilizes the nervous system while simultaneously anchoring attention into the present moment. The longer you stay with it, the more your awareness stops scattering outward. And that's when many people experience their first real glimpse of inner stillness. Not forced silence, natural silence. Another advanced practice comes from yogic traditions, and it's called alternate nostril breathing. But most people only learn the beginner version. The advanced version is where things become interesting. Here's how it works. You close the right nostril and inhale slowly through the left. Then close both nostrils briefly. Then exhale through the right side. Then reverse the process. Right inhale, hold, left exhale. And the key is smoothness. No rushing, no forcing. Just controlled awareness. This balancing pattern is believed to harmonize opposing energies within the body and mind. But here's what makes the practice spiritually powerful. It forces awareness into subtlety. You begin noticing tiny shifts in sensation. Temperature changes in the breath, mental fluctuations, emotional resistance. Your attention becomes refined. And spiritual awakening often has less to do with gaining mystical experiences and more to do with becoming sensitive enough to perceive what was already there. The deeper your awareness becomes, the more you notice how disconnected most people are from themselves, including the version of yourself you used to be. Now we move into one of the more powerful practices used by mystics and advanced meditators for centuries: breath retention. This should always be approached carefully and gradually, because breath retention doesn't just change oxygen levels, it changes consciousness. Here's a gentle version. Take a slow, deep inhale through the nose, exhale fully, then remain still for a comfortable pause before breathing again. Not strain, not force, stillness. What's fascinating is that during the pause after exhalation, the mind often becomes unusually silent, almost suspended. And there's a reason for that. The egoic mind is deeply connected to movement, stimulation, and constant internal activity. But during breath retention, especially after exhalation, there's a temporary interruption in that momentum. For brief moments, awareness exists without the usual mental turbulence. This is why many advanced spiritual traditions associate stillness in breath with stillness in identity itself. Not because breathing stops permanently, but because for a moment, the psychological self loosens its grip. And over time, you may begin noticing something unexpected. You become less reactive in daily life, less emotionally controlled by external situations, because conscious breathing trains the nervous system to remain present under pressure instead of collapsing into unconscious reactions. One of the most transformative techniques combines breath with focused inner awareness. This is called spinal breathing visualization. As you inhale, imagine energy moving upward through the spine, from the base of the body toward the space between the eyebrows. Then as you exhale, imagine the energy moving back downward, slowly, smoothly, calmly. Whether you interpret this literally or symbolically doesn't really matter, because the real mechanism is attentional concentration. You're training the mind to move inward instead of outward. Most people spend their entire lives trapped in external stimulation, notifications, noise, distraction, endless mental consumption. But advanced breathwork reverses that direction. Attention stops scattering outward and begins gathering inward. And that inward gathering creates clarity, not fantasy, not escapism, clarity. And eventually, you stop feeling so internally fragmented. Your awareness starts feeling centered, unified, like your attention finally has somewhere to rest. Now there's another practice that's deceptively simple but incredibly powerful: extended exhalation breathing. This technique is especially effective for dissolving anxiety, emotional heaviness, and chronic internal tension. Here's how it works. Inhale gently for 4 seconds. Exhale for 8. That's it. But the longer exhale activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the part responsible for deep calm and restoration. And spiritually, something else begins happening too. Extended exhalation teaches surrender. And surrender is one of the hardest things for the ego to do. Most people are constantly gripping life internally, trying to control outcomes, control identity, control perception. But long exhalations subtly train the nervous system to let go. And over time, that psychological tension starts weakening. You stop fighting existence quite so much. You stop resisting the present moment. And ironically, that's often when deeper awareness finally begins emerging, not through force, but through release. Now, if you practice any of these techniques consistently, you may notice periods where buried emotions rise to the surface unexpectedly. This is normal. Breathwork can unlock suppressed emotional energy stored within the nervous system and body. So if sadness, fear, frustration, or even unexplained emotional waves appear, don't panic. Awareness is bringing unconscious material into the light, and healing often feels uncomfortable before it feels peaceful. That's why grounding matters. Go slowly, stay balanced, and don't turn spiritual breathing into another competition. Because awakening isn't about becoming superhuman, it's about becoming fully conscious. And strangely enough, as awareness deepens, breathing itself often changes naturally. It becomes slower, softer, more efficient. Some advanced meditators even describe moments where the breath becomes so subtle it nearly disappears altogether. Not dangerously, peacefully, as if awareness itself begins breathing instead of the body. And maybe that's why the breath has remained central to spiritual practice for thousands of years. Because no matter where you are, no matter how distracted life becomes, the breath is always here, waiting to bring you back to yourself. If this video resonated with you, consider subscribing to Mystic Reflections for more videos exploring consciousness, awakening, inner transformation, and the deeper dimensions of spiritual life. And remember, the breath is always happening. The question is whether you're truly present for it.